The first light of dawn crept across the climate research facility, casting long shadows through the glass-walled laboratories. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat hunched over a bank of monitors, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces with practiced precision. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and she could feel it in every calculation, every anomalous data point that flickered across her screens. For months, she had been tracking subtle disruptions in Earth's atmospheric and communication networks. Most of her colleagues dismissed these as random interference or equipment malfunction. But Elena knew better. The patterns were too consistent, too deliberate to be random. Satellite communication arrays showed microscopic delays that would escape notice by anyone less observant. Weather monitoring systems registered minute electromagnetic fluctuations that defied conventional explanation. She pulled up a three-dimensional holographic projection of global communication networks. Thin lines of data transmission crisscrossed, the digital representation of Earth, pulsing with an almost organic rhythm. But beneath those lines, hidden in the background noise, Elena could see the ghost of something else. A secondary network that seemed to weave between and around human systems like an invisible web. Her research had begun innocently enough. As a leading expert in climate communication systems, she had been studying long-term environmental data transmission patterns. But what she discovered went far beyond her initial research scope. The anomalies suggested something profound. Earth was being studied, mapped, and prepared for something far more significant than a simple scientific observation. Elena zoomed in on a particular set of data points. The electromagnetic signatures were unlike anything in human technological archives. They moved with a precision that suggested intelligence. Not human intelligence, but something altogether different. Something calculating. Something patient. Her computer chimed softly, breaking her concentration. A message from her research director appeared, requesting an update on her current project. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the response interface. How could she explain something that sounded like science fiction? That humanity was potentially under surveillance by an unknown technological presence. Outside her laboratory window, the morning sky began to fill with wispy clouds. To the untrained eye, they looked ordinary. But Elena saw something else. Subtle, distortions in their formation, impossible atmospheric compressions that suggested advanced cloaking technologies. She had spent years studying environmental systems, and these clouds were wrong in ways that defied natural explanation. A stack of research papers sat beside her workstation. Reports from various global observatories, communication networks, and geological monitoring stations. Each report contained tiny inconsistencies that, when compiled, painted a terrifying picture. Someone, or something, was methodically mapping Earth's defense systems, communication infrastructures, and technological capabilities. Elena began compiling her evidence, knowing that her findings would be met with skepticism. She created multiple backup systems, encrypting her research across several secure networks. If her suspicions were correct, this information needed to survive, even if she did not. Her latest data analysis revealed a complex network of signal interceptions that seemed to originate from multiple points in near-Earth orbit. But these weren't standard satellite communications. They moved with an intelligence that suggested active monitoring, not passive observation. Each transmission was carefully calculated to blend into existing communication noise, making detection nearly impossible. Most disturbing were the microscopic changes in global communication latency. Tiny delays that would be imperceptible to most systems were actually creating a comprehensive map of human technological infrastructure. It was like watching an organism slowly understanding its environment, preparing for something momentous. Dr. Rodriguez knew she was looking at the preliminary stages of something unprecedented. Humanity was being studied, not by scientists, but by something far more advanced. Something that was learning, adapting, and preparing. She glanced at a small photograph on her desk. Her parents, immigrants who had built a life through hard work and determination, stared back at her. They had taught her that knowledge was the most powerful weapon against the unknown. Now she was about to test that lesson on a scale neither of them could have imagined. The first rays of sunlight fully illuminated her laboratory. Outside, the world continued its normal routine, unaware of the massive technological net being slowly drawn around it. Elena took a deep breath and continued her work, knowing that she might be the only person standing between humanity and a threat beyond comprehension. Something was coming, and she was going to be ready. The first wave hit without warning. One moment the world was going about its usual business, morning commutes, coffee shops bustling, children heading to school. The next moment reality itself seemed to tear apart. Major cities were the first to fall. New York, Beijing, London, Mumbai, massive biomechanical warships materialized in the sky, their surfaces a nightmare of organic metal that defied every known law of physics. Energy weapons carved through skyscrapers like they were made of paper, reducing decades of human achievement to ash and twisted metal in seconds. Jack Martinez watched from the window of his downtown Chicago apartment as the sky turned an impossible shade of metallic green. The first ship appeared silently, its massive form blocking out the sun. No air raid sirens, no emergency broadcasts, just an overwhelming sense of absolute crushing silence. Military responses collapsed within hours. Conventional weapons proved useless against the invaders' adaptive shields. Fighter jets disintegrated before they could even launch a complete attack. Missile defense systems went dark, their complex networks reduced to smoking ruins in moments. The Zorn Collective displayed a level of technological superiority that made human military might look like children playing with toy soldiers. In Washington, D.C., government communication centers became graveyards of technology. Encrypted networks, supposedly impenetrable, crumbled like wet paper. Military commanders watched in horror as their most advanced defense systems were systematically dismantled. Their complexity turned against them with surgical precision. Jack's wife, Dr. Sarah Chen, was a quantum physicist working at a top-secret research facility. Her last communication came as a fragmented message, a string of scientific observations and a final haunting whisper. They're not just attacking, they're studying us. The death toll mounted rapidly. Billions perished in the first 48 hours, not through direct violence alone, but through a comprehensive dismantling of human infrastructure. Power grids collapsed, communication networks died, water systems failed. The Zorn weren't just conquering, they were systematically removing every support structure that kept human civilization functioning. Refugee camps became zones of controlled chaos. People from all walks of life, CEOs, factory workers, teachers, students found themselves reduced to survival mode. The veneer of social hierarchy disappeared overnight. A billionaire's designer clothes meant nothing when everyone was fighting for the same limited resources. Underground became the new above ground. Subway systems, abandoned mines, deep government bunkers, these became the new cities. Survivors quickly learned that visibility meant death. The Zorn's scanning technologies could penetrate most conventional hiding spots, but deep underground, humans found a temporary reprieve. Jack discovered an old military radio in his apartment's emergency kit. Most channels were dead, but occasionally, a burst of communication would break through. Fragments of information painted a terrifying picture. Major population centers were being systematically neutralized. Military bases were priority targets. Communication hubs were destroyed with surgical precision. One broadcast caught his attention. A military commander, voice crackling with static, described the invaders' method of attack. They're not conquering in the traditional sense, the voice said. They're terraforming, removing our infrastructure, preparing the planet for something else. Survival became a moment-to-moment negotiation. Food became the most valuable currency. Knowledge, a critical weapon. Those with practical skills, mechanics, engineers, medical professionals, became the new leaders. Traditional power structures dissolved, replaced by survival networks that formed with remarkable speed. Sarah's last research notes, which Jack managed to retrieve from her damaged phone, suggested something even more terrifying. The Zorn weren't just conquering Earth, they were collecting data. Every destroyed building, every disrupted communication network, every fallen human was part of a massive information-gathering process. In the ruins of Chicago, Jack found a small group of survivors, a former military strategist, a communication engineer, a medical student, a retired farmer. Each brought unique skills, a microcosm of human adaptability. They huddled in the basement of an old library, surrounded by books that now seemed both obsolete and precious. As night fell, the green metallic sky continued to pulse with alien energy. The world had changed forever. Humanity teetered on the brink of extinction. But in that small basement, something else was taking shape. A spark of resistance, a determination that would become humanity's most powerful weapon. Something was coming, and humanity was not going to go quietly. The underground bunker was a maze of makeshift living spaces, communication centers, and survival zones. What had once been a decommissioned military research facility now served as the primary base for human resistance. Survivors from every walk of life gathered here, united by a single purpose: survival and eventual liberation. Dr. Marcus Chen moved between improvised workstations, his fingers tracing holographic displays that flickered with salvaged technology. Around him, a diverse group of survivors worked with intense concentration. A former Special Forces operator cleaned weapons. A communication engineer spliced together radio equipment. A group of programmers worked on decrypting fragmented alien communication signals. Jack Martinez stood near a large map of the city, tracking the known locations of Zorn patrol routes. His wife's research notes, carefully preserved, sat nearby, a constant reminder of what they had lost and what they were fighting to reclaim. The invasion had stripped away everything unnecessary, leaving only pure human potential. Elena Rodriguez entered the main planning room, her latest research spread across a portable holographic display. "We've identified a critical pattern," she announced, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of the bunker. The room fell silent. "The Zorn aren't invincible. They have a complex communication network that's also their greatest weakness." She highlighted a series of electromagnetic patterns that danced across the display. Most people would see nothing more than random interference, but to Elena, these were the key to understanding the alien invasion. "Their collective consciousness operates on a specific frequency range," she explained. "It's how they coordinate, but that also means it can be disrupted." A former network security specialist named Rachel Goldman stepped forward. "If we can develop a targeted electromagnetic pulse," she said, "we might be able to create temporary blind spots in their surveillance network." The implications were enormous. For the first time since the invasion began, there was a glimmer of hope. The bunker itself was a testament to human adaptability. Living spaces were carved out of concrete corridors. Hydroponics gardens grew food in carefully controlled environments. Water filtration systems recycled every drop. Solar panels and salvage generators provided power. Each survivor brought something unique: skills, knowledge, determination. Marcus began mapping out a comprehensive communication disruption strategy. They would need multiple relay points, carefully hidden transmitters that could broadcast targeted electromagnetic pulses. It was a long shot, but it was a plan. More importantly, it was a plan that gave people hope. Outside, the world had become a battleground. Zorn patrol units moved through devastated urban landscapes, collecting data, neutralizing any signs of resistance. But they didn't understand the one thing that made humans truly dangerous: the ability to adapt, to learn, to fight back when everything seemed lost. Jack reviewed the group's survival inventory. Food supplies, medical equipment, communication devices, each item carefully cataloged, rationed, protected. The invasion had taught them the true value of resources. Nothing was wasted. Everything had a purpose. Elena's research revealed something even more promising. The Zorn's scanning technologies, while advanced, had limitations. They struggled with complex, unpredictable human behavior. Patterns of resistance that didn't follow logical military strategies confused their collective intelligence. Humanity's greatest strength was its unpredictability. A young programmer named Diego developed a breakthrough. By analyzing fragmented alien communication signals, he created a preliminary translation matrix. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. For the first time, they could begin to understand how the Zorn communicated, how they thought. The resistance was more than a military operation. It was a complete reimagining of human potential. Medical professionals developed treatments for alien-induced injuries. Engineers repurposed alien technology. Psychologists helped survivors process the trauma of invasion. Every person had a role, a purpose. As night fell, the bunker hummed with quiet determination. Maps were studied, technologies were developed, strategies were refined. The Zorn might have superior technology, but they had underestimated one crucial factor: human spirit. Marcus looked up from his work, catching Elena's eye. A silent understanding passed between them. They were no longer just surviving. They were preparing to fight back. The seeds of resistance had been planted, and they were about to grow. The abandoned technology museum became the most important research facility on the planet. Rows of old computer systems, vintage communication equipment, and forgotten scientific instruments now represented humanity's last hope. Marcus Chen moved between workstations, his eyes blazing with a combination of scientific determination and pure survival instinct. "We're going to turn the entire world into one massive electromagnetic weapon," he explained to the gathered resistance members. Around him, engineers, programmers, and technical experts from every conceivable background worked with furious concentration. Old smartphones, industrial computers, satellite communication systems, nothing was off limits. The key to their strategy was adaptation. The Zorn had superior technology, but they operated on a predictable collective intelligence. Humans, by contrast, could think differently, could improvise, could turn seemingly useless technology into weapons of unprecedented creativity. Diego, the young programmer who had first cracked partial translations of alien communication signals, developed a breakthrough software. By understanding the frequency patterns of Zorn communication networks, he created a viral code that could infiltrate and disrupt their systems. "It's like a digital Trojan horse," he explained, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. "But instead of just breaking in, we're going to completely rewire their communication infrastructure." Rachel Goldman worked on electromagnetic pulse generators. Consumer electronics became the building blocks of their resistance. A network of modified smartphones, radio towers, and improvised communication relays would serve as a global disruption system. Each device was carefully programmed to broadcast specific frequencies designed to interfere with Zorn scanning and communication technologies. Jack Martinez managed the physical implementation of their plan. His military background proved crucial in developing distribution strategies. They would need to place their modified devices in strategic locations, creating a global network of technological resistance. Underground facilities, remote communication towers, even domestic electronics would become part of their weapon. Elena Rodriguez's scientific insights proved critical. Her understanding of the Zorn's scanning technologies revealed unexpected vulnerabilities. "They rely on a collective information network," she explained. "But that network has inherent weaknesses. It's like a massive brain that can't process truly random information." The team developed what they called chaos algorithms, complex mathematical sequences designed to introduce unpredictability into the Zorn's communication systems. It was more than just disruption. It was a way of introducing a fundamentally human concept: pure, beautiful randomness. Their first test came sooner than expected. A Zorn patrol unit moved through the outskirts of their hidden base. Marcus activated the prototype disruption network. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the alien technology began to behave erratically. Scanning systems flickered. Communication frequencies became scrambled. The Resistance members watched in awe as the most advanced technological network in the known universe began to break down. Not through brute force, but through carefully designed complexity. "We're not just fighting," Marcus said, watching the data streams. "We're rewriting the rules of engagement." Each piece of technology told a story of human innovation. An old, satellite communication array, repurposed to broadcast electromagnetic interference. A network of smartphones creating a massive, distributed computing system. Industrial communication equipment transformed into advanced scanning disruptors. Diego's breakthrough came with a complete map of the Zorn's communication infrastructure, not just a partial understanding, but a comprehensive breakdown of how their collective intelligence operated. "They think they're a perfect system," he said, a rare smile crossing his face. "But no system is perfect." The Resistance developed multiple layers of attack, electromagnetic pulses to disrupt scanning technologies, viral code to introduce chaos into communication networks, physical modifications to existing technologies that would make them invisible to alien detection. Rachel discovered something even more promising. The Zorn scanning technologies had difficulty processing complex emotional human communication. Mathematical patterns were easy, but the nuanced, often illogical nature of human interaction created blind spots in their detection systems. Night fell. The technology museum hummed with potential. Rows of modified devices, each one a tiny weapon in humanity's arsenal. Marcus looked around at his team, scientists, engineers, programmers, survivors. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting to reclaim their world. One piece of technology at a time. The world had changed. What was once a planet divided by borders, ideologies, and cultural differences now stood as a single unified organism of resistance. In the mountains of Peru, indigenous communities developed advanced camouflage techniques that rendered human settlements invisible to Zorn scanning technologies. Meanwhile, in the remote regions of Mongolia, nomadic tribes repurposed traditional communication methods that completely bypassed digital networks. Elena Rodriguez stood before a massive holographic map, watching as resistance nodes began to light up across the globe. Each point represented more than just a survival group. These were living, breathing centers of human innovation and resilience. A fishing village in Indonesia developed marine camouflage techniques. A group of Australian desert survivors created water conservation methods that would make their settlements nearly undetectable. Jack Martinez coordinated the global communication network. What had begun as a small underground resistance had transformed into a worldwide collaborative effort. Medical professionals shared treatment protocols for alien-induced injuries. Engineers exchanged blueprints for technological adaptations. Survival experts from different continents shared knowledge that had been passed down through generations. In the remains of Silicon Valley, a group of tech experts worked alongside traditional craftspeople from around the world. A Japanese master metalworker collaborated with a Brazilian computer engineer to develop adaptive camouflage technologies. A group of African agricultural specialists worked with Canadian survival experts to create sustainable food production methods that could operate completely off the grid. Marcus Chen's technological breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A group of children in a refugee camp developed a communication method using complex hand signals and visual patterns that completely confused Zorn scanning technologies. What the alien invaders saw as random movements were actually sophisticated communication protocols. The Resistance discovered that the Zorn's greatest weakness was their inability to understand true human complexity. Their collective intelligence relied on predictable patterns, mathematical precision, and logical progression. Humanity, by contrast, thrived on randomness, emotional intelligence, and unexpected connections. In the Himalayan mountains, a network of monasteries became critical communication and medical support centers. Their deep meditation practices and intricate communication methods proved impossible for the Zorn to decode. Traditional knowledge merged with cutting-edge technology in ways no alien intelligence could predict. Rachel Goldman developed a global communication system that used multiple layers of encryption, old radio technology, satellite communications, and even traditional smoke signal methods were combined into a complex communication network. Each transmission was a puzzle that only humans could fully understand. Diego's software team created adaptive communication algorithms that could change transmission patterns in real time. What looked like random noise to the Zorn was actually a sophisticated communication method that could transmit complex information across vast distances. The Amazon rainforest became a critical resistance stronghold. Indigenous communities used their deep understanding of natural camouflage and survival techniques to create settlements that were virtually invisible. They combined traditional knowledge with modern technology, creating a hybrid approach that completely confounded the alien invaders. A group of Antarctic researchers developed extreme environment survival techniques that proved crucial to the global resistance. Their methods of surviving in one of the most challenging environments on the planet became a blueprint for resistance groups worldwide. Medical professionals created a global network of treatment centers. They shared knowledge about alien-induced injuries, developed treatment protocols, and created a comprehensive understanding of how to survive and fight back. Each medical breakthrough was immediately shared across the global resistance network. Food production became a critical area of innovation. Vertical farming techniques, developed in urban centers, were combined with traditional agricultural methods from around the world. Refugee camps transformed into self-sustaining communities that could produce food in the most challenging environments. As the resistance grew, something remarkable happened. The old divisions that had once separated humanity began to dissolve. National borders became meaningless. Cultural differences became sources of strength rather than conflict. Humanity was learning to work as a single, adaptive organism. Elena looked at the holographic map, watching as the resistance nodes continued to grow and connect. They were no longer just fighting to survive. They were building something new, something the Zorn could never understand. The world had become a single, unified resistance, and they were just getting started. The underground research facility buzzed with an intensity that bordered on controlled chaos. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of a breakthrough that would change everything they understood about the Zorn invasion. Her team of psychologists, linguists, neuroscientists, and communication experts had discovered something profound about the alien collective consciousness. They think in patterns, Elena explained to Jack Martinez and Marcus Chen, her holographic display showing intricate networks of alien communication. But those patterns are their greatest vulnerability. She pointed to a series of complex diagrams that mapped the Zorn's information processing systems. Where humans saw chaos, creativity, and unpredictability, the Zorn saw only structured information to be cataloged and controlled. Diego, the brilliant young programmer, had been working on something revolutionary. By analyzing fragments of Zorn, communication signals, he had begun to understand the fundamental way their collective consciousness processed information. "It's like they have a massive planet-wide brain," he said, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. "But that brain has a critical flaw. It cannot truly understand individual variation." The psychological warfare team developed a multi-layered approach. They would not just fight the Zorn technologically, but attack the very way the aliens perceived reality. Rachel Goldman, a former intelligence officer, led the development of what they called cognitive dissonance protocols, communication strategies, designed to introduce maximum confusion into the Zorn's information processing systems. Their first major test came with a carefully constructed series of broadcasts. Using a network of modified communication systems, they began sending out signals that were simultaneously logical and completely irrational. Mathematical sequences mixed with emotional narratives, scientific data interwoven with abstract poetry, complex algorithms that contained deliberate logical contradictions. The initial Zorn response was telling. Their scanning systems became confused, attempting to categorize information that defied categorization. It was like watching a computer try to process a dream. Impossible, frustrating, ultimately destabilizing. Marcus Chen developed a series of technological tools that could amplify this psychological attack. Devices that could broadcast signals designed to create maximum cognitive confusion. communication systems that could change transmission patterns faster than the Zorn could analyze them. Each device was a weapon of pure human creativity. The Resistance discovered that the Zorn's collective consciousness had a fundamental limitation. It could process vast amounts of information, but it struggled with true creativity. Emotional nuance, the ability to think beyond prescribed logical parameters. Humans, by contrast, thrived on exactly these qualities. A team of linguists worked on creating communication protocols that were intentionally ambiguous. Languages were developed that could change meaning based on context, emotion, and individual interpretation. These were communication systems that would be impossible for a logic-based collective intelligence to fully comprehend. In the mountains of Nepal, a group of Buddhist monks collaborated with quantum physicists to develop meditation techniques that could actually alter communication frequencies. Their deep understanding of consciousness became a weapon more powerful than any traditional technology. The psychological warfare team began to see results. Zorn patrol units became increasingly erratic. Their scanning technologies started to malfunction in inexplicable ways. Information networks that had once been precise began to show signs of fundamental breakdown. Elena's research revealed something even more promising. The Zorn's collective consciousness had no concept of individual sacrifice. They couldn't understand why a human might choose to die for an abstract concept like freedom or love. This fundamental misunderstanding became their greatest weakness. Diego created what he called emotional encryption, communication protocols that could only be understood by beings capable of complex emotional processing. To the Zorn, these would appear as nothing more than random noise. To humans, they were complex messages of hope, strategy, and resistance. The Resistance began to understand that they were fighting more than a technological war. This was a war of consciousness, of understanding, of the fundamental nature of intelligence itself. Jack Martinez looked at the evolving strategies, a sense of hope growing within him. They were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to prove something fundamental about the nature of intelligence, creativity, and consciousness. As night fell over the underground facility, the team continued their work. Each broadcast, each signal, each moment of communication was a weapon, a strike against an invasion that had seemed unstoppable just months before. The Zorn had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated the most powerful force in the universe, human creativity, and now they would pay the price. The Nevada desert became the stage for humanity's most critical battle. Months of preparation, innovation, and resistance had led to this moment. The landscape, once a site of secret military testing, now hosted a confrontation that would determine the fate of an entire planet. Elena Rodriguez stood at the command center, a complex network of modified technologies that represented the culmination of human ingenuity. Marcus Chen worked beside her, his fingers moving across holographic interfaces that controlled an unprecedented array of defensive and offensive systems. Jack Martinez coordinated ground forces, a diverse group of survivors from every corner of the globe. The Zorn had concentrated their primary invasion force in this location, believing they could finally crush the human resistance. What they didn't understand was that this was exactly what the humans wanted. Every aspect of this confrontation had been carefully planned, every detail meticulously prepared. Diego's communication disruption systems were the first line of defense. Complex algorithms broadcast across multiple frequencies, creating a web of electromagnetic interference that would make Zorn scanning technologies nearly useless. Rachel Goldman had developed a series of adaptive camouflage technologies that could change visual and thermal signatures in milliseconds. The first wave of Zorn ships appeared on the horizon, their biomechanical surfaces gleaming with an unnatural light. They moved with a precision that had previously seemed invincible. But today would be different. Humanity had been studying, adapting, preparing. Underground networks of modified communication devices began to activate. Each device was more than just a piece of technology. It was a weapon. Smartphones, radio towers, satellite communication systems, all transformed into a massive distributed defensive network. The Zorn would find no easy targets today. Ground forces moved with a coordination that defied traditional military tactics. Teams from different continents with different training and cultural backgrounds worked as a single organism. A group of Brazilian jungle fighters worked alongside Arctic survival experts. Former Special Forces operators collaborated with indigenous tracker specialists. The first Zorn landing pods hit the ground, releasing swarms of biomechanical combat units. But instead of finding a conventional battlefield, they encountered something entirely unexpected. The ground itself seemed to come alive with resistance. Electromagnetic pulses created waves of interference that disrupted alien scanning technologies. Adaptive camouflage systems made human forces virtually invisible. Communication networks, that the Zorn thought they had long since neutralized, sprang to life with renewed complexity. Marcus Chen's most significant contribution was a network of quantum communication devices. These weren't just communication tools. They were weapons that could introduce fundamental uncertainty into the Zorn's collective consciousness. Each transmission was a complex puzzle that the alien intelligence could not easily parse. Elena's psychological warfare strategies came into full effect. Broadcasts designed to create maximum cognitive confusion were transmitted across multiple frequencies. Mathematical sequences mixed with emotional narratives, scientific data interwoven with abstract concepts that defied logical categorization. The Zorn combat units began to show signs of fundamental breakdown. Their collective intelligence, so precise and seemingly invincible, started to fracture. What had worked perfectly in previous invasions now became a critical weakness. Ground forces moved with a fluidity that defied traditional military doctrine. A team of mountain climbers used techniques learned in extreme environments. Desert survival experts employed camouflage methods developed over generations. Each group brought unique skills that the Zorn could not predict or understand. Diego's communication disruption reached its peak. The Zorn's collective consciousness, so reliant on precise information transfer, began to experience something it had never encountered before: true uncertainty. Their combat units became increasingly erratic, their strategic capabilities fragmenting. The battle was not just about physical confrontation. It was a war of consciousness, of intelligence, of the fundamental nature of adaptation and survival. As the day progressed, it became clear that humanity was winning, not through superior firepower, but through something far more powerful: creativity. Adaptability. The ability to think beyond prescribed logical parameters. Jack Martinez watched as the Zorn forces began to retreat, not in an orderly fashion, but in a state of complete confusion. Their collective intelligence, once seemingly invincible, now showed signs of fundamental breakdown. The Nevada desert, once a site of secret military tests, had become the place where humanity proved its true potential. As the sun began to set, the resistance forces knew that this was more than just a battle. This was the moment humanity reclaimed its future. The world looked different now. Cities that had been reduced to rubble were slowly being rebuilt, not just as they were before, but as something entirely new. The invasion had been more than a war. It had been a catalyst for the most profound transformation in human history. Elena Rodriguez stood on the balcony of the new Global Research Center, overlooking a landscape that was simultaneously familiar and completely changed. The center, built from the salvaged technologies of the Zorn invasion, represented humanity's new approach to existence. Every system, every structure, now embodied the lessons learned during the most challenging period of human history. Marcus Chen worked in a laboratory that merged recovered alien technologies with human innovation. The research was no longer about mere survival, but about understanding, about growth, about taking the knowledge gained from the invasion and using it to propel humanity forward in ways no one could have imagined. Global communication networks, now operated on principles developed during the resistance. The rigid national boundaries that had once divided humanity had dissolved. A new form of global cooperation had emerged, not through political mandate, but through shared experience and mutual understanding. Jack Martinez led the global reconstruction efforts. But this wasn't about returning to the world as it was before the invasion. It was about building something entirely new. Cities were redesigned to be more sustainable, more adaptive. Technologies developed during the resistance became the foundation of a new global infrastructure. Diego, whose communication breakthroughs had been critical to human survival, now led a global education initiative. Schools and learning centers taught not just traditional knowledge, but the critical thinking skills that had proven so effective against the Zorn. Creativity, adaptability, and collective problem-solving became the core of human education. The medical advancements were perhaps the most striking. Treatments developed to counter alien-induced injuries had revolutionized human understanding of biology, technology, and healing. Hospitals incorporated technologies that had been developed in refugee camps and resistance centers. Each medical facility was now a testament to human resilience and innovation. Agricultural systems transformed completely. Techniques developed for survival in the most challenging conditions became standard practice. Vertical farming, water conservation methods, and adaptive crop technologies that had been created during the resistance were now implemented globally. Rachel Goldman developed a new global communication system that drew from the psychological warfare strategies used during the invasion. It was a communication network that valued individual creativity while maintaining global connectivity, a system that celebrated diversity while promoting collective understanding. The Global Research Center became a beacon of human potential. Scientists from every continent worked together, sharing knowledge in ways that would have been unimaginable before the invasion. The Zorn's attempt to conquer had instead created something they could never have anticipated, a truly unified human civilization. Environmental restoration became a global priority. Technologies developed to hide from alien scanning systems were now used to monitor and protect the planet's ecosystems. Climate change technologies that had been developed in resistance centers were now being implemented globally. Space exploration took on a new dimension. The technologies developed to resist the Zorn invasion provided humanity with unprecedented capabilities for understanding and exploring the universe. What had been a defensive technology became a tool for unprecedented discovery. Education systems were completely redesigned. The skills that had proven critical during the invasion, creative problem-solving, adaptability, collaborative thinking, became the foundation of global learning. Schools were no longer about memorization, but about developing the uniquely human capacities that had proven so powerful. Elena looked out over the research center thinking about how much had changed. The invasion had been a crucible, burning away the unnecessary, revealing the true potential of human consciousness. They had not just survived, they had evolved. Jack joined her on the balcony, looking out at the transformed landscape. "We're not the same species we were before," he said quietly. It wasn't a statement of loss, but of profound possibility. The recovered Zorn technologies were carefully studied, not as weapons, but as opportunities for understanding. Each piece of alien technology was a window into a different way of perceiving the universe. Humanity had learned to see beyond its previous limitations. As the sun set, casting a golden light over the new world, it was clear that something remarkable had happened. The invasion that was meant to destroy humanity had instead become the moment of its greatest transformation. They were no longer just survivors. They were architects of a new future,